One of the key concepts in strength training specifically, but in training in general, is that the internal load, the physiological processes that are happening within you when you train, are responsible for your progress more than the training load outside of your body, the external load. We use the kettlebell, we use the barbell, we use body weight. We use those tools as well as specific patterns, hinges, squats, pushes, and pulls, to elicit a greater response from your body. What I'm talking about here is that it's not the lifts or the weights that make you stronger. It's what you do in response to those lifts, those skills that you practice. It's what you do in response to that heavier weight that makes you stronger. In the basic skills clinic, in all of the skills clinics or event clinics that we run at Salem Kettlebell Training, you'll find a page called Action Principles, or How to Find Your Strength Instantly. These are things that the strongest people on the planet do naturally, that I can teach you in order to find the strength you already have and tap into it more successfully. So in the StrongFirst Kettlebell Training Manual, the StrongFirst Girya Manual, there are 3 action principles listed: the principle of hyperradiation, principle of feed-forward tension, and the principle of dominanta. I've added 2 other skills that we use in the StrongFirst system to the list of action principles because I think they contribute greatly to the effectiveness of those others. The 2 that I've added are power breathing and fast and loose drills. So power breathing is really immensely key to tapping into your body's innate strength during the performance of an exercise. There's a whole video on power breathing further on down the list, the playlist here. Essentially what you're doing is you're filling up with the most air that you can on the inhalation, and you're not doing that to draw in extra air, extra oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, whatever. You're doing that to pressurize the stable joint segments of your body. So when I draw my breath in through the nose in a power breath, my diaphragm is forced down into my abdominal cavity. You'll see my belly, even my back and sides swell around my abdomen when I draw that breath in. That's not me breathing into my belly, that's me breathing into my lungs in such a way that the diaphragm is forced down into my abdominal cavity. It's going to put pressure on my pelvic floor and around all the sides of my abdomen to help stabilize my lumbosacral joint segment, which is supposed to be a stable joint segment according to the joint-by-joint approach. That power breath is tremendous. You can be capable of lifting so much more simply by drawing that full breath in and giving your body the confidence that comes from having a stable midsection while you're performing an exercise. The power breath out. There's a visible contraction of the abdominal muscles and the glutes, sealing that canister of pressure down when you exhale. In ballistic exercises like swings, cleans, and snatches, that power breath, that exhalation happens very quickly. That's where you get that seal off, is at the top. In grinds, like the squat or the press or the deadlift, that exhalation may be held off until you finish the lift in the event of a very high intensity lift. Because you need to maintain high pressure throughout that whole range of motion. In some cases, that power breath on a grind sounds more like a ratcheting of the breath. You can get a little bit of extra power from letting a little bit of air bleed out at a time. In some cases, as is taught in the goblet squat and the double kettlebell front squat, that power breath starts off with a grunt. And then continues out. That grunt initializing the ascent powerfully out of the bottom position. Or any combination of those. So the power breath is really, in my mind, the first stop on the action principles train. In the functional movement screen video, you'll hear me refer to Gray saying, first, fix your breath, then get strong. If you don't have the breath, you're not going to be able to get strong. The second action principle is more about the flip side of the tension and relaxation coin. I say flip side because an athlete needs to be able to cycle back and forth between both high tension and high levels of relaxation, high neurological excitation and deep, thorough, calming relaxation. And it's the athletes who can cycle between those two sides most quickly that are the most proficient and most successful at their sports. The flip side of the tension coin is relaxation. We demonstrate that here with fast and loose. So after a high tension effort, like a deadlift, like a set of swings, like a set of goblet squats, like a press, like a Turkish get-up, you've created a lot of tension. Your muscles are tight. They're contracted. They need help relaxing and becoming supple and ready again. And in that case, we have fast and loose drills. And there's a whole series on these fast and loose drills. But essentially, the idea is to just relax the muscle almost off of the bones. And there's a lot of different ways in which we can do that. Another approach would be self-massage. So if you've just done a set that has sort of made your muscles feel full or congested, that's all the nutrient delivered to that muscle that was necessary for the degree of contraction you were performing during that set. A lot of times it happens in higher rep sets. You may need to sort of massage the muscle to relieve some of that congestion before you start doing your fast and loose drills. The third piece on the action principles is the principle of But since we're not supposed to shake anybody's hands right now because of the coronavirus, I'll demonstrate just with a kettlebell. So I can pick this kettlebell up with a loose grip, my fingertips just hanging around the handle. And, you know, I'm not creating much tension yet. I'm just kind of letting the bell hang by my skeleton. Now I'm going to close my fingers a little bit, and my forearms are going to turn on. I'm going to close them a little bit harder. The muscles around my elbows and my upper arms are going to turn on. I'm going to close them even harder, and my shoulder blades are pulled into their stable position by my lats. My glutes are starting to contract here as well. If I now incorporate a power breath and squeeze even harder, I can bring every muscle of my body into play. In the press, that looks like this, and it's a great way to demonstrate this principle. So, press with no tension, and this gets really hard, really heavy, really fast. Squeeze the hands, and it gets a little bit easier. Squeeze the hands and the glutes, and it gets even easier. Now incorporate the power breath. No problem. So that's the principle of hyperradiation. It's a high tension drill. So when I'm done practicing it, do a little fast and loose. Relax a little bit. The fourth action principle is that of feed forward tension. Feed forward tension is sort of an anticipatory contraction of muscles, getting ready for the effort. One of the best demonstrations of this is in the eccentric phase as you're lowering towards the bell or barbell that you're going to deadlift. So if I'm going to deadlift a heavy bar or a heavy kettlebell, I'm going to anticipate what that feels like by contracting everything in this top position while I'm still unloaded, as though I'm already holding a heavy object. I'm going to lower my body to the kettlebell as though I'm lowering this heavy object. Then I'm going to get my grip set and stand, and it's like my body already knows what that's going to feel like. So the performance of that lift becomes much easier. I'm already anticipating what the load is going to feel like, and it's like nothing. It turns this relatively heavy effort into one of relative ease. The fifth and final action principle is dominanta. That of having a single thought in your head. So we've already talked about a lot of stuff. We've talked about the power breath. We've talked about fast and loose. We've talked about feed forward tension. In each of those, a part of the body is doing one thing or another. It's really difficult to do the thing you're going to do if you've got all of these thoughts clouding your head. So you find the single thought, the dominant thought. For me, again, the best way to practice this is with the press. And my thought, as I'm pressing, my dominant thought, my one thought, is that my elbow is going to fully extend. So yes, I've got that anticipatory big breath in. I'm going to do my power breath. Yes, I'm squeezing everything as hard as I can with the principle of hyperradiation. But it's getting that elbow to full extension that successfully completes the press. That's my thought. When I think about that, all the rest of it fades away. All I'm thinking about is that elbow getting to full extension, and I've successfully pressed. So those are the action principles, the 3 that come from StrongFirst, the 2 that also come from StrongFirst but that I incorporate into the action principles here at Salem Kettlebell Training. These are all things that you already have within you. The skills that we practice and the tools that we use just create a greater understanding of those action principles that you already know.